Thank you for taking the time to watch our video. We hope that you're going to find it useful. First of all, welcome to the Sergeants team. We're glad to have you and your student on our team this year. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking about some of our team expectations, and then we will talk about each subject area individually. If you still have questions, please email the individual teacher whose subject area that is. So first of all, if you're interested in volunteering, we love volunteers. We would love to have you join us through PTSO or other ways as well. If you want to look at the PTSO website, that is connected to the Harris Road website. Go to the Harris Roads website and there is a PTSO link, and they have lots of information about how you can become involved. Also, we do take a few field trips this year. We're taking quite a few of you on our field trip this Thursday. If you're ever interested in being a field trip chaperone, that's something that's a possibility now and then possibly once at the end of the school year on our end of the year field trip. Copy room, we always can use some help in the copy room. If you're interested in doing that, please contact Ms. Blanchard, and I will let you know when you can come in. We'll work out a time for you to come in to learn how to use our copiers and kind of talk what would be the most helpful thing for you to do. Proctoring, we always need proctors for end of grade testing, so be on the lookout for that to come home toward the end of the year. If you're interested and available, I know that's a very thankless job, but it is something that we have to have proctors to be able to do our testing. So if you're available, that would be wonderful. If you're interested in volunteering in any capacity, please be sure to go online and fill out the Cabarrus County Schools volunteer link. It's available under the quick links of the Harris Road website. It does have to be filled out every 2 years, so if you haven't done it within the last 2 years, please go back on and update that. If you have, then you should have a card that attests to your volunteer status. If you can't find your card but you think you've done it, let us know. We can check on that for you. Otherwise, you can just go ahead and fill that out. It does take a couple weeks to get back, generally, to get the clearance back. So if you can give us a little lead time on that before you want to volunteer, that's great. Discipline and how that works for sixth grade. The way that that's going to work on our team, we have behavior slips. They are about a quarter of a sheet of paper. They're so about 4 by 5 inches or so, and it'll just describe what the behavior was that was an issue. Generally, if your child gets a behavior slip, it means it's either A, something that's just a blatant black and white, something we've discussed that's a no-no, or it's something like talking in class that they've been doing off and on pretty frequently, either that day or that week or whatnot. But generally it's something that is, if it's like something like that, it's something we've already spoken to them about in class. So it would not be the first time that they've done it. But a behavior slip is very similar to something like a below the line or something like that in elementary school. If your child comes home with a behavior slip, please do sign and return those. If your child earns 4 behavior slips, then they will be referred to the office because that would signify that they've had some chronic types of behaviors that are becoming an issue. So they would be referred to the office where they would meet with an administrator who would talk with them about their behaviors and brainstorm some solutions. And there may be consequences for that. Could be things like, depending on how many behavior slips they've had at that point, it could be Wednesday schools or lunch detentions, or it could go further into in-school suspension, or even further if they've had quite a few behavior slips, because after each behavior slip after the 4th one, they will go to the office as well. Sometimes students have behaviors that are referred directly to the office rather than through a behavior slip. It could be something, if they were fighting or something like that, is going to be referred directly to the office, not just sent through the team as a behavior slip. And in that case, the administrator determines the consequences in that case as well. If you want to be in tune to what's going on in middle school, because we all know middle schoolers are not necessarily fountains of information, then some tips for you would be to definitely use our websites. And within our websites, there's 2 main things you can do. One thing is to use Canvas. There's a link to Canvas, and Canvas is sort of your everything portal for homework. And I would go there and look and see what the homework is. There's often links to videos. There's links to PDFs of assignments, things like that. Sometimes there's an assignment itself to do on Canvas. So that's sort of your everywhere homework thing. It also often has updates on tests, quizzes, and other things like that. The other thing you can get through our websites that you don't have to click all the way through to Canvas is links to classroom documents and other useful links. So you might find some of that on our websites as well. The parent portal is where you can keep up to date with your students' grades. Your login information, if you logged in elementary school, should be the same login information. Students have not yet received their login information, but should sometime in October. But you as a parent can log in using the same information that you used last year. If you are a parent who's new to Cabarrus County Schools, your students should be getting a letter that gives information about logging in for that. They should go home one day this week. Parent conferences, we do not do a conference day like what they do in elementary school at the end of each quarter or at the end of the first quarter. Instead, we have conferences all year anytime you feel like you need to do that. Our suggestion is that you meet with all 4 core teachers because that gives you a good picture of your student's day, but you can meet with just 1 teacher or 2 teachers if that's what you feel like you need. Generally, we meet on Mondays or Fridays between 12:30 and 2. You just contact a team teacher and we'll set that up for you. Sometimes we can do other times. It depends on what else we have going on that week. Remind. The Remind papers have been sent home with students. That's an app that allows you to receive text messages directly to your phone. They're just short little text messages that are sort of immediate reminders. Things like, hey, picture day is tomorrow, or calendar test due tomorrow, or quiz and social studies tomorrow, things like that. Work policies. Students are responsible for getting and turning in their makeup work when they've been absent. We've had quite a few students absent already this year, and absences can really hurt a student's performance and grade overall simply because we do so much in one day. So it's really important that they take that makeup work seriously. Often they can get their makeup work before they ever come back by going on Canvas. So if they're out sick for the day, maybe they can look on Canvas and get that makeup work and know what it's going to be. Even if they don't get it done, they can at least know what they're going to be responsible for. If you know your student's going to be missing some days, then it's always helpful to let us know ahead of time, and if we can, we'll get work for you. Sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. But that's a really helpful thing to do as well. If your student is absent, we do want you to send in a note with them that can go to the front office. You can also fill out the absence link online. It's under the quick links for Herschroed. But do go ahead and send in a note as well, and those get turned into the front office. If your student has something that happens and they don't get their homework done or their classwork done and it's going to be late, this is for things that are graded assignments, not effort checks, which meaning something that we check, go over in class, and they keep. That cannot be turned in late because we will have already gone over it. But other homework assignments that are graded or classwork assignments that are graded, if your student for whatever reason doesn't get that turned in on time, they can turn it in late. If it's turned in within a week, then they'll have a 20-point deduction. If it's turned in more than a week late, they'll have 40 points deducted from the grade. And if it's not turned in by the end of the quarter, it will be a 0. Larger projects or things that take more than a day or two, they're assigned for more than a day or two, or calendar tests. Those are grades that count more than once generally. Those grades, if those are late, then it'll be a 10-point deduction per day late up to a maximum of 4 days late. After that, the maximum grade will be a 50. So they can turn it in more than 4 days late, but the maximum grade will be a 50 at that point. Now, we're going to take a little bit of time to talk about each of the subject areas for you as well. This is Ms. Blanchard. I'm going to start with math. Now, if your student goes to Ms. Hicks for math or to Ms. Mills for math, there's going to be probably some different information for them, and you may want to touch base with those teachers to see if there's anything specific that you really need to know about those classes. So math this year, we'll continue to do computation with fractions, mixed numbers, decimals, and we'll also do percents, which are something that's probably new or new-ish for most kids. We'll work on that a good bit this year. We'll also compare and order fractions, decimals, again, working with percents, and also integers. So we're throwing in a lot of work with negative numbers. We will solve one-step equations and inequalities. That also, in our algebra unit, will get into expressions and combining like terms and using the distributive property to simplify expressions and things like that as well, and to write equivalent expressions. Also this year, we'll work on area, perimeter, surface area, and volume, and we will work on coordinate graphing in all 4 quadrants, so being able to graph ordered pairs. We will graph equations as well, and we will also we'll talk about independent and dependent variables and how those are shown on a graph. And then we'll end the year with statistics and data analysis. And so that'll be our last thing we do during the year. The other things I mentioned won't necessarily be taught in that order, but statistics is our last unit. Now that's all in our regular math classes. In our AMPS math class, we'll also do all 4 operations with negative numbers. We'll talk about area and circumference of circles. We'll talk about cross sections of three-dimensional figures. We'll talk about characteristics of different triangles and other figures and what it takes to make them. We will solve two-step equations, write and solve them. And the AMPS classes, it's important for students and parents to understand that for students to continue on that path in 7th grade, they do have to maintain a certain level of performance. So at the end of the year, we will be looking at report card grades. We will be looking at testing on EOG tests and things like that to see where students are and make decisions about whether or not we may need to change placements at the end of the school year. Some tips for success in math class. Calendar test, calendar test, calendar test. That's a big, big, big deal. It truly looks like a calendar. The one for September is green. If you've not seen it, please ask your student about it. Actually, it's not green. It's sort of an orangey color, sorry. But if you haven't seen it, ask your student about it, and they should be able to show that to you. It has a problem for each day of the month. That's not to say they have to do one per day. It simply means that within the time frame of the month, they have to finish the whole thing. Some students choose to do all of it on weekends or do 2 a night until it's done. Whatever works for your family situation works for us as long as it's done. They can get something called a pre-check, which means they can bring it in home base in the morning and get all of their answers checked. And I will tell them which ones are wrong so that they know which ones they need to fix. And then they can bring it back to me again once they fix them, and I'll tell them which ones are still wrong. And they can do that so they can get up to 2 pre-checks before the pre-check deadline. The pre-check in September is on September 22nd, and the final due date, where it all has to be done with the work attached, the answers on the back, is September 29th. So that's a big, big, big grade because it does count 3 times. It is a test grade. Basic math facts. It is so important that students have a good command of basic math facts, particularly multiplication and division. If that's something your student struggles with for fluency, I strongly recommend that you work with flashcards, or probably what most kids would enjoy more is either on a phone or on a computer to do electronic flashcards. And that's something that even just a few minutes a day can make a really, really big difference. Their term notebook. Hopefully you've seen those term notebooks come home. It's where they'll take their notes for this year, and hopefully they've come home and they're using it and you're taking a look at it, and then they're bringing it to class every day. And also, if they're absent, it's really important that they get their notes. They can get that via Canvas, or even if they're not absent but they just need a review of a topic, they can get those notes. It'll be posted daily in Canvas. If there was a lesson where they took notes, there'll be a video that goes through and gives the notes and gives the lesson as well. And then if it's not something that was that day or recent, it would be available on my website. There's a link to instructional videos, and there's videos for every topic we do all year long. So that's really a great resource, whether they've been absent or they just need to go back and refresh their memories on a certain topic. Tutoring. I've gotten a lot of questions about tutoring. We will do math tutoring this year. It will be on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. It will not start until the first week of October. It'll be Tuesday and Wednesday mornings at 8 a.m. If your student is interested in participating in that, you would simply need to drop them off at the front of the school. One of the 6th grade math teachers would meet them there, and they'll walk down with us, and then we'll work on math. Now, we work Tuesdays, we generally work on calendar tests. Wednesdays, we work on class topics, whatever kids really need at that point. And again, you just drop them off at the front of the school. You do not need to tell me that they're coming. And it'll start the first week of October, so don't do it in September. It'll start the first week of October, and it's on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, with the exception of when we might have a staff meeting or something like that, and we'll tell the kids ahead of time about that. Last but not least, ALEKS. We do not have ALEKS accounts set up yet, but ALEKS is an online adaptive learning. It's where kids go online and they take an assessment, and based on how they do on that assessment, then a learning path is set for them of topics that they should be able to do based on what their assessment has shown they already know. And it works its way through all of the 6th grade topics, and if they finish all that, then they can even get into their 7th grade PI. Once we start that, students will be expected to complete 15 topics, generally 15 topics every 2 weeks. Sometimes we may change that a little bit depending on school breaks and things like that, but generally about 15 topics every 2 weeks. And if they're keeping up with all of that, chances are they're going to be pretty successful in math class.
Hello, this is Mrs. Summers, and I'm the social studies teacher on the Sargent's team. This year in social studies, we will be looking at the 5 eras in history, beginning with the prehistoric period of time and ending in the year of 1450. So we cover a lot of information within the school year, and the students will keep that information in their binders. I'll talk about binders a little bit more in just a second. The main topics that are going to be covered this year will include the Stone Age and the development of the first civilizations, including Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, the Indus River Valley civilizations, ancient China, ancient Greece, and the Roman Empire. We will also finish off the year with the medieval period in Europe and wrap up with the study of Mesoamerica, which includes the Aztecs, Incas, those civilizations, and the Mayans. So in social studies this year, all of their work should remain in the social studies section of their binder throughout the study of each era. They should have one large binder that should contain 3 subjects in it. It should have their social studies, their science, and their math section. So at the point when students will be instructed to remove those papers and to store them at home to make room for the new era of study. So parents, I encourage you, in addition, look over these binders during the weekend. Organization is the key. Please make sure that they are not shoving papers in front pockets and folders. As teachers, we would prefer that those papers go in each section to match the subject. So again, their one big binder should have social studies, science, and math work only. Lastly, thank you for coming. Feel free to contact me at any point if you have any questions or concerns. You can check my website. Go to the school page to check my website if you have any questions or concerns. So that wraps up social studies. Thank you for listening. Again, if you have any questions about social studies, please feel free to contact me by email.
This is Mrs. Turner, your child's language arts teacher. In language arts, we follow the North Carolina Standard Course of Study, and we teach using the Reader Workshop Framework. In class, students normally hear a read aloud. This is the time when I model good reading and writing skills through the use of a mentor text. Students share what they learned by partner talking, pairing, and sharing. After the mentor text, students then do some type of independent practice with the skills they learned. This year in ELA, students will be self-selecting their text, and the requirements for the amount of books they need to read for each class is posted on my web page. Students should be reading at least 20 minutes a night and answering the skills on their think marks. Think marks will go home next Tuesday with a orange sheet of paper explaining the criteria. So students need to have their independent reading book, which we refer to as an IRB, at all times. It is a book they'll bring to school and home for reading. It is a self-selected text that must be on their level. They need to keep track of the amount of books they read on their reading log. That is in the front of their ELA binder. First quarter, each week, we will have a spelling list, quizzes each Friday. After first quarter, we will then move to vocabulary.com, and there'll be information forthcoming on that. If you have any questions about ELA, you may contact me at 704-782-2002, or you may email me. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Mr. Kidd, your student science teacher. In science this year, your student will learn how to apply the science process, skills, and the scientific method. One of the things we're going to be doing is building an understanding of the lithosphere, which is the Earth's crust. We'll also be investigating the characteristics of matter and energy flow through an ecosystem. We will investigate the characteristics of energy transfer. We'll talk about the solar system. Finally, in science, students are to keep a science section in their binder for their science notebook. Thank you for coming tonight, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you again so much for the time that you've taken to watch this video. We hope you have found it to be useful. We thank you for sharing your child with us every day, and we look forward to a great year together. Please make sure that you're checking the parent portal regularly, that you're looking on Canvas regularly, and checking in with us anytime you have a question. We are great emailers, so if you email us, we will get right back to you pretty quickly. If you don't hear from us within 24 hours, chances are it went into our spam folder. So just send it to us again, or try giving us a call, and we'll be happy to respond to you again. We look forward to a great year, and please don't hesitate to contact us if you have questions.